The crystal chandelier caught every gasp. Amara didn't flinch when the wine glass shattered near her feet. Didn't step back when Theodore Ashford, Ford's 500, fourth-generation wealth, widow of 6 months, turned to his dinner guests with a smile sharp enough to cut. "Well," he said, surveying the Bordeaux bleeding into Persian silk. "I suppose that's what happens when you hire help who can't tell a salad fork from a soup spoon." Laughter rippled through the dining room. Polite. Practiced. The kind that cost nothing to give. Amara stood still in her server's uniform, black dress, white apron, shoes she'd polished that morning until they reflected the faces staring at her now. She held the empty tray against her ribs, counted her breaths. 1, 2. Theodore leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming the mahogany table. "Though I suppose we should be grateful. Diversity makes us stronger, or so they tell me. Even if it means replacing competence with effort." More laughter. Louder now. Amara's hands didn't shake. Not when the woman in Chanel whispered to her neighbor. Not when the man nearest Theodore raised his glass in mock salute. She simply looked at Theodore Ashford, really looked, and in a voice that barely carried past the table, said, "Tell them I chose well." Silence dropped like a guillotine. Theodore's face went white, then red. His mouth opened, closed. The woman in Chanel frowned. "What did she?" "Get out," Theodore whispered. Amara didn't move. "Get out." She set the tray down carefully, precisely, and walked toward the door with her spine straight and her chin level. The only sound her footsteps on marble that had been laid a century before she was born. Behind her, someone said, "Theodore, what on earth?" But Amara was already gone. 72 hours earlier the job posting had appeared on a Friday. Private estate seeks experienced servers for exclusive dinner event. One night only. $500 flat rate. Formal attire required. Discretion essential. Amara had seen it while sitting in her Baltimore office. Corner suite, 20th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the harbor. She'd been reviewing acquisition targets for her investment firm when her assistant, Grace, had knocked softly. "You asked me to flag anything unusual. Define unusual." Grace had pulled up the posting on her tablet. "Theodore Ashford is hosting a dinner. His first since Catherine died. He's hiring through an agency I know you have history with." Amara had studied the screen. Theodore Ashford. Real estate empire built on his great-grandfather's railroad fortune. Properties across 3 continents. A wife, Catherine, who died of cancer in April, for months after diagnosis. Catherine, who'd worked at the agency 15 years ago. Before Theodore. Before money. Catherine, who'd been Amara's roommate when they were both 23, both waiting tables, both convinced they'd never escape the weight of other people's expectations. "He's hiring her old agency?" Amara said quietly. "Same one. I thought you'd want to know." Amara had closed the acquisition report, opened her desk drawer. Inside, a photograph. 2 young women on a Baltimore stoop, arms around each other, laughing at something the camera couldn't capture. Catherine's last text, sent 2 days before she died, was still on Amara's phone. "He doesn't see me anymore. Just the disease. Just what I cost him in time and patience. I chose wrong, eh? I thought I chose love." Amara had typed a reply that never sent. And now Theodore was hosting a dinner. Moving on. Erasing. "Grace," she'd said. "Give me a uniform. Amara, I want to see who he really is." The Ashford estate sat on 40 acres in Connecticut. It's like teeth. Driveway longer than some streets. Amara had arrived at 4 p.m. with 5 other servers, all hired through Catherine's old agency. The manager, a thin man named Douglas, had looked at her twice. "Have we met?" "I don't think so. You look familiar." Amara had smiled. The smile that gave nothing away. "I have one of those faces." The house was museum cold. Marble and oil paintings and silence that felt like judgment. Catherine had lived here for 8 years. Died here. Amara wondered which room. Douglas had walked them through service protocols. Wine pairings. The guest list, 12 people, all from Theodore's circle. Old money and new alliances. "Mr. Ashford expects perfection," Douglas said. "He's been difficult since his wife passed. Don't take anything personally." One of the other servers, a young man, maybe 25, had muttered, "Difficult how? Just keep your head down and do your job." They'd set the table together. Amara had touched each plate, each glass, wondering if Catherine had eaten here. If she'd sat at the head of the table or been decorative, silent, slowly disappearing. At 7 p.m., the guests arrived. At 7:30, Theodore made his entrance. Tall, graying, handsome in the way money makes men handsome. Good suits, good posture, good teeth. He'd greeted his guest with charm that looked effortless and probably was. Amara had served the first course, oysters on ice, mignonette sauce, microgreens, and watched him hold court. Catherine would have loved this, someone said. Theodore's smile hadn't faltered. She had excellent taste. In most things. Laughter. Knowing. Cruel in its carelessness. Amara had returned to the kitchen, steadied herself against the counter. The second course, lobster bisque. She'd carried it out on a silver tray, movements practiced and invisible. Set bowls in front of men who didn't look up, women who examined their nails. Theodore had been mid-story. Something about a deal in Dubai. His audience leaning in, captivated. When Amara reached his seat, she'd placed the bowl carefully. He glanced up. Do you need something? No, sir. Then stop hovering. She'd stepped back, but as she turned, her sleeve caught the stem of his wine glass. It toppled. Slow motion. Red wine arcing like blood. And Theodore's face transformed. Are you kidding me? The room froze. Amara bent to retrieve the glass. I apologize. Do you have any idea what this tablecloth cost? He stood, napkin pressed to a tiny splash on his sleeve. This is Italian linen. Irreplaceable. I'll cover the cleaning. With what? Your weekly salary. He turned to his guests, performance mode engaged. This is what happens when standards slip. When we prioritize optics over competence. That's when he'd said it. The line about hiring help. About diversity and effort. And that's when Amara had spoken. Tell them I chose well. Catherine's last words to her. Whispered through morphine and tears, hands squeezing Amara's so hard it left marks. Tell them I chose well. That I wasn't weak. That I saw clearly at the end. Theodore's world had stopped spinning. Now, walking toward her car in the darkness beyond the estate's light, Amara heard running footsteps. Wait. Dubless. Breathless. You can't just… What did you say to him? Amara opened her car door. Something true. Theodore's hands shook when he lifted his scotch. The guests had left an hour ago. Awkward goodbyes, uncertain glances, promises to call that no one would keep. Now he sat alone in his study, curtains drawn, city lights distant and cold through bulletproof glass. Tell them I chose well. Catherine's voice. Her exact cadence. The way she'd said it in the hospital when her sister visited, when the nurses changed shifts, when Theodore himself had asked if she needed anything at all, and she'd just stared at the ceiling. He thought she was confused, medicated, talking to people who weren't there. But that server, that woman, how did she know? Theodore opened his laptop, typed, Amara plus Baltimore plus server. Nothing useful. Food service agencies, catering companies, dead ends. He tried, Catherine Ashford plus friends. Images loaded. Catherine at charity galas. Catherine cutting ribbons. Catherine beside him, smiling for cameras, playing the role she'd been hired, married to play. He scrolled deeper. High school photos. College. Before. There, a Facebook post from 2009, privacy settings expired. Catherine tagged in a photo outside a Baltimore diner. 2 years waiting tables, and we're still broke. Love you at Amara Okoro. Amara Okoro. Theodore searched the name. LinkedIn loaded first. CEO, Okoro Holdings. Investment firm specializing in minority-owned businesses, African diaspora ventures, ethical capital deployment. Portfolio, 15 companies. Assets under management, $1.4 billion. His chest tightened. The second result was Forbes. The quiet billionaire. Amara Okoro's mission to rebuild wealth where it was stolen. Photograph, the woman from tonight. No server's uniform. Custom suit. Standing in front of a Lego skyline. Expression unreadable. Theodore read faster. Okoro had built her firm from nothing. Started with a single patent, logistics software she developed while working 3 jobs. Licensed it. Reinvested. Grew. She didn't do press. Didn't attend conferences. Operated like a ghost in networks where everyone else fought for visibility. And she'd been Catherine's roommate. Her friend. Theodore's phone rang. He ignored it. Rang again. The board chair. Not now, Richard. Theodore, we have a problem. I said, Okoro Holdings just declined our stadium proposal. We've been courting them for 8 months. They were our anchor tenant. Without them, financing falls apart. Theodore went still. What? They sent a one-line email an hour ago. Pursuing opportunities with partners whose values align with our mission. What the hell did you do? I didn't. She was at your house tonight, wasn't she? Someone posted a photo. Okoro in a server's uniform outside your estate. It's already on Twitter. Theodore pulled up Twitter with numb fingers. The photo was grainy but clear. Amara walking to her car, face calm, caption underneath, when billionaires do undercover research. At Amara Okoro exposing? For 1,000 retweets. Theodore, if you insulted her, I didn't know who she was. That's not better. Richard's voice climbed. Do you understand what she controls? The network she's connected to? We have 6 projects in development that rely on her portfolio companies. 6. If she pulls support. Why would she be serving at my dinner? Silence. Then, quieter. Maybe you should ask her. The call ended. Theodore sat in the dark. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Catherine kept a journal. I have it. If you want to understand what you said tonight, meet me tomorrow. 2 p.m. Patterson Park, Baltimore. Come alone. He stared at the screen. Typed, who is this? No response. Theodore didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., he drove to Baltimore himself. No driver, no assistant. 3 hours in silence, mind circling. Catherine had kept a journal? She'd never mentioned it. But then, she'd stopped mentioning most things in the last year. Stopped talking about her work with the Literacy Foundation. Stopped asking about his day. Just smiled when guests came. Played hostess. Faded into wallpaper. He thought it was. The cancer. The treatments. Depression. He'd been patient. Hadn't he? Patterson Park was nearly empty at 2 p.m. October wind pulling leaves from trees. Playground swings creaking. Amara sat on a bench near the pagoda, hands folded, dressed in jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than the server uniform, but looked just as understated. Theodore approached slowly. Ms. Okoro. She didn't stand. Just watched him. You could have told me who you were. You could have treated me like a human being regardless. He flinched. Sat down, leaving space between them. Catherine never mentioned you. She wouldn't have. You didn't like her old life. The parts before you. That's not. You made her change her phone number. Stop seeing friends who didn't fit. She told me. Amara's voice was even. Clinical. You didn't forbid it. You just made everything easier if she complied. Schedules that conflicted with visits. Events that required her full attention. Slowly, we stopped talking. Theodore's jaw worked. I was building something. We were building something. You were building. She was disappearing. Amara pulled a notebook from her back. Small, leather-bound, worn at the edges. She sent this to me a week before she died. Asked me to keep it safe. Said if anything happened, I'd know what to do with it. She held it out. Theodore took it carefully. Opened to a random page. March 12th, Theodore hosted 18 people tonight. I smiled for 4 hours. My face aches. He introduced me as his wife, Catherine, 3 times and forgot my name once. Just said my wife and moved on. I don't think he noticed. Theodore turned pages. April 3rd, the diagnosis came back. Stage 4. Dr. Patel said 6 months, maybe less. I told Theodore in the car. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, we'll fight this. I'll hire the best team. I wanted him to hold me. He made phone calls instead. Theodore's throat closed. April 29th, I asked Theodore if he loved me. Actually asked out loud. He looked confused. Of course, he said. Why would you ask that? I couldn't explain. How do you tell someone they love the idea of you, but not the person? That you're a placeholder in their perfect life? He couldn't read more. Closed the journal. Amara's eyes were steady. She wrote that last entry the day before she died. The nurse called me. I came. You weren't there. I was in a meeting. You were always in a meeting. Theodore's hands curled around the journal. She knew I loved her. Did she? I gave her everything. The house, the life, the things. Amara's voice cut clean. You gave her things. She wanted you to see her. I did see her. Then why? Amara said quietly. Did she spend her last months writing letters to friends you'd helped her erase, saying she'd made a mistake? Theodore stood abruptly. Paced. Stopped. Why did you come to my house? Why humiliate me? I didn't come to humiliate you. I came to understand. Amara stood now too. Catherine was my best friend. My sister. And she died believing she'd wasted 8 years on someone who valued her like furniture. I wanted to see if she was wrong. And she wasn't. The words landed like stones. Theodore's voice dropped. That's not fair. You called me incompetent in front of your friends because I spilled wine. Imagine how you made her feel every day. I never. You didn't have to yell. You just had to stop seeing her. And you did. Long before the cancer. Theodore sat back down. Heavily. The journal in his lap like evidence. What do you want from me? Amara tilted her head. Nothing. I wanted you to know the truth. That's all. The stadium deal has nothing to do with this. Your proposal didn't align with our investment thesis. That decision was made weeks ago. She turned to leave. Wait. Amara paused. Theodore's voice cracked. Was she at the end? Was she in pain? Yes. Did she say anything else? About me? Amara considered, then reached into her bag again. Pulled out an envelope. She wrote you a letter. Asked me to decide if you deserved to read it. She set it on the bench between them. I thought I'd burn it. But maybe you've earned this much. She walked away without looking back. Theodore sat alone as shadows lengthened. Then, with shaking hands, he opened his wife's last words. Theodore, if Amara gave you this, it means she thinks there's something in you still worth reaching. I'm not sure I agree, but I promised I'd write it anyway. I don't hate you. That's important for you to know. Hate requires energy I don't have anymore. What I feel is sadder. It's the grief of realizing I spent 8 years trying to earn something you were never capable of giving. You love the idea of me. The perfect wife. Beautiful enough for photographs, smart enough to manage your social calendar, quiet enough not to challenge you. I fit the role. I was grateful to fit it. And by the time I realized I'd erased myself to do it, there was nothing left to reclaim. Do you remember our first date? We walked through Patterson Park. You asked about my family, my work, my dreams. You listened like it mattered. I fell in love with that version of you. The one who saw me. But that man disappeared the moment I said yes. Maybe he was never real. Maybe you were performing too. I don't know. What I know is this. I'm dying. And I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid I'll leave nothing behind. No children. No career. Just a name on your tax forms and photographs in frames you'll pack away. I want to be angry. I want to scream at you for the ways you diminished me. The interruptions, the dismissals, the blank stares when I spoke about anything that wasn't useful to you. But anger is heavy, and I'm so tired. So here's what I'll leave you with instead. You're going to forget me. Faster than you think. You'll meet someone new. Someone easier. And you'll tell yourself you mourned appropriately. That you did your best. That I was just too fragile to survive. But on some quiet night, maybe a year from now, maybe 10, you'll remember me. Really remember. And you'll realize what you had. Not a trophy. Not a hostess. A person. Someone who loved you before the money and the houses and the performance mattered. And here's the part that will hurt. You'll realize I'm gone. Completely. And there's no amount of wealth or power or control that can bring me back or undo how small you made me feel. I don't write this for revenge. I write it because I need you to see clearly, just once. To understand that you had something real and you starved it until it died. Tell yourself I chose well if it helps you sleep. But we both know the truth. Catherine Theodore read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and sat with his head in his hands as the park emptied and the light turned amber. 3 months later, Theodore stood in front of a different building. Not his estate. Not his office. A community center in West Baltimore, brick and graffiti and chain-link fence. Inside, voices. Laughter. The smell of something baking. The sign read, Catherine Ashford Literacy Foundation, opening day. He'd funded it. Quietly. Through a trust Catherine had established years ago, before she got sick. She'd started the paperwork and never finished. He'd found it in her files. It had taken lawyers, accountants, permits. He'd attended every meeting. Signed every check. Refused every request to put his name on the building. Just hers, he'd said. Only hers. Now he stood outside, hands in his pockets, watching through the window as volunteers helped kids with homework, as parents browsed shelves of donated books, as a woman who looked like Catherine, same smile, same warmth, led a reading group. He didn't go inside. Didn't deserve to. But he came every Tuesday. Same time. Just to see it exist. Amara found him on the 4th week. She didn't speak. Just stood beside him, arms crossed, watching the same window. Finally, you could go in. I don't think so. They'd welcome you. They shouldn't. Amara glanced at him. You're funding 3 more sites. How did you? I know everyone involved in literacy work in this city. She almost smiled. You're using shell companies, but your structure is sloppy. Theodore shrugged. I don't need credit. Catherine would have liked this. Catherine deserved it years ago. They stood in silence. The journal, Theodore said quietly. Thank you for giving it to me. I almost didn't. Why did you? Amara considered. Because she'd want you to be better, even if she never saw it. Theodore nodded, cleared his throat. Your firm, the stadium deal. Richard said you declined. We did. Because of me? Because your financing model exploited tenant businesses and displaced low-income residents. I don't fund that. She looked at him directly. It wasn't personal. It was principle. Right. But, Amara added, we're backing a different stadium proposal. Community-owned. Revenue sharing. Interested? Theodore blinked. Why would you want me involved? I don't. But your capital could be useful if it's structured ethically. And if you're actually trying to change, I'd rather help direct that than let you stumble around doing damage. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. You don't get endorsements. You earn chances. She handed him a business card. My assistant will send details. Read them carefully. There's no shortcut this time. She turned to leave. Amara. She paused. At the house. When I said those things. He struggled. I'm sorry. Truly. She studied him. I don't need your apology. Neither does Catherine. What we need is for you to be different when no one's watching. How do I do that? You start by seeing people. Really seeing them. Not as functions or obstacles or decorations. As whole, complicated, valuable human beings. She gestured at the center. You're doing it here. Do it everywhere. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you'll fail trying. She walked to her car, a modest sedan, nothing flashy, and drove away. Theodore stood alone as evening came. Then he walked inside. The woman leading the reading group looked up. Can I help you? I'm Theodore Ashford. Catherine was my wife. Recognition. Warmth. Mr. Ashford. Please, come in. We've wanted to thank you. There's no need. There's every need. This place is changing lives. She gestured to the kids, the books, the light. Your wife dreamed this. You made it real. Theodore's eyes burned. She should be here. She is, the woman said gently. Every time someone learns to read, every time we open a book, she's here. Theodore nodded, not trusting his voice. A girl approached. 9, maybe 10. Braids and bright eyes. Are you Mr. Ashford? I am. Miss Carter says you knew the lady this place is named for. I did. She was my wife. Was she nice? Theodore thought of Catherine laughing on that first date. Catherine planning the foundation. Catherine writing in her journal that she'd chosen wrong. She was extraordinary, he said. I didn't appreciate her enough. That's sad. Yes, it is. But you helped make this place, right? So that's good. My mom says people can be bad and good at the same time. Theodore smiled despite himself. Your mom is very wise. The girl returned to her book. Theodore stayed for an hour. Listened to kids read. Helped shelve donations. Said nothing about funding or boards or control. Just existed. Useful. Quiet. Present. When he left, the woman who'd welcomed him walked him out. You're welcome anytime, she said. Truly. Thank you. Catherine talked about you, you know. Early on, when she was setting this up. Theodore stopped. She did. She said you'd be skeptical. That you'd think it was too small to matter. But she believed you'd surprise her. The woman smiled. Maybe she was right. Theodore drove home through dark streets, the journal on his passenger seat. That night, alone in the house that had been too big for 2 people and was enormous for 1, he opened his laptop. Drafted an email to Richard. I'm stepping back from acquisitions. Recommend someone ethical for my seat. I'll remain as a capital partner, but nothing more. Sent it. Drafted another. To Amara's assistant. I'd like to discuss the stadium proposal. Not as a lead investor. I don't think that's appropriate. But as a limited partner. Whatever structure protects the community. Sent that too. Then he opened Catherine's journal to the first page and began to read from the beginning. Every word she'd written. Every moment she'd felt invisible. Every time he'd failed her. He read until sunrise. And when he finally closed the journal, Theodore Ashford, billionaire, widower, man who'd mistaken control for love, made himself a promise. He would spend the rest of his life seeing people. Really seeing them. Not because it would bring Catherine back. Not because it would erase his failures. But because she'd asked him to be better, and some part of him, the part she'd loved once, still wanted to try. Outside, Baltimore woke. Cars and voices and life continuing. Theodore stood, made coffee, opened his laptop, and got to work.